everybody, welcome to the Heartway podcast. This is Jody here, and today I have Todd with me. Todd, if you could introduce yourself and tell us more about your role there at Faith Baptist Church in North Little Rock.
Well, I'm Todd Dornan. I am the associate pastor here at Faith, and I'm really new to the staff and to the church here. I pastored previously almost 20 years in Denair, California at the Denair Missionary Baptist Church, but the Lord seemed fit to move me last September to Faith Baptist Church, and just kind of getting acclimated and trying to fit in and, serve the people here at Faith. So that's it in a nutshell.
All right. Yeah, it's great to have you here today. And so we're actually doing this interview on Zoom. This is our first time doing a podcast over Zoom. I'm over here in the Houston area. He's in the North Little Rock area. And so that's why we're doing it this way. And we're excited to have that possibility. And a little bit about, today and what we're going to talk about. We do a weekly Zoom with pastors, missionaries, church planners, ministry leaders, all over the world, all over the U.S. And Todd sometimes comes up into that, and we talk about different topics each week. And recently I forget the main topic we were talking about, but it got to a point where he mentioned about not taking things personally, different comments, different things that were being done. Maybe it was like a missionary losing support from a partnering church, something like that. Some people's comments, not taking them personally. And when he was talking about that, it just really resonated with me, thinking, wow, this is something we could go deeper into, because there's a lot of weight on ministry leaders and pastors and missionaries with how to handle different actions, different comments, different reactions from people and churches. So that's kind of what we're going to get into today. So I'm going to ask Todd some different questions and just kind of let him speak on these things. So the first question we have here today is how can we, Todd, respond to things like declining or less attendance in church than we would like? So maybe it's not what we're expecting. How can we respond to that?
Well, being a pastor for almost 30 years, and speaking to missionaries and church planters and other pastors, we bear the weight. We feel like, the success, what we deem as or perceive as success, falls on us. And so when attendance is declining or plateauing, we have a tendency to take that personal as a reflection of our ability or our pastoring. And are sometimes declined because of the pastor, his lifestyle. Yes, you can't deny that, but not in every instance. Sometimes I've seen churches even, 25, 30 years ago, the demographics changed in the area. And so the church didn't necessarily change to the community. It just stayed the same. And so we've seen decline. I know in Denair, we experienced an ebb and flow of attendance, and there seemed to be sometimes there were hurdles, like hitting the 50 barrier, exceeding that, and and so sometimes it's easy to get discouraged when things decline or plateau. When the baptistry is growing cobwebs instead of keeping water in it, baptizing people. But I've learned, at least where I pastored, that all I can control, if you will, is how I minister to my people, how I encourage them to do outreach and trust God, leaving the results to God. Paul said it right. I planted, Apollos watered, God gave the increase. Culture changes from as years go by. Circumstances, situations, all play a part of your area of ministry. Being in Denair and then hearing my friends, maybe from the South and, all the success they seem to be having in the back, sometimes it's like, oh man, I want that. Why isn't that happening here? And I think sometimes if we compare, it can do us some harm in the sense of, comparison. You're not in the same area, you're not in the same context, not, the same culture. Mm-hmm. And you really have to just look at and examine your own context. And so I'll just give you an example at Denair. When I got to Denair, it was a small, struggling church. Their previous pastor had passed away because of a brain aneurysm. He was there for 12, 13 years, very beloved. But the church was very small. They had about, 25 members. So I came in, I was bivocational, and I just loved on the people for a while, got to know them. The church, God bless, we began to grow. In some years, it was slow going in the beginning, and we hit that 50 mark. We doubled our size, and we just could not get over that hurdle. We'd gain members, and then some families would move away because of jobs, and it just seemed like we were having a hard time, just going beyond and reaching our community. And so, I was raised, with some traditional thinking, door knocking, so I tried all the things that I knew, and I learned that I had to really kind of begin to, because, especially in California, door knocking is, people just don't want you to come to their door. So you have to kind of think outside the box. And so I really began to pray. My wife began to pray how we can reach our community. And so we realized that if we want to make an impact on our community and have it, in effect, affect our church and attendance, we needed to be involved in the community. And so we were presented, God opened some doors. My wife and I served on a couple of committees for our city that we lived in. We served on the Denair Farm and Family Festival Committee. I also served on a committee called Denair Cares. It was more of a service-based committee. But basically, it gave me an opportunity to meet people outside the four walls of my church building, my church family, and begin to understand the city that I live in and reach people where they are. And through time of just getting to know people, God blessed, and people began to take notice and begin to visit and to attend and then ask questions and go forward. But there's successes and failures in all that story. And so I had to learn, and it's hard, but because there's people that come and visit that wouldn't return. And it's like, okay, why? Was it a bad sermon I preached? Sometimes we're too self-focused. What did I do wrong? Perhaps it's it wasn't their style of music that we had, whatever. And I had to learn that I am not responsible for the decisions that people make, and I just need to be faithful in what God has called me to do. And I'm still continuing to learn, still continuing to thrive. And so, we hit a peak in Denair. We were averaging over 100 at one time. And then before I finally stepped away, we were down, in the 80s. It just ebbed and flowed. And I don't know, if the small attendance and decline was all on me. I don't think so. I think it's just the times in which we live. But again, we were still reaching people. In fact, I went back and I visited just a couple of weeks ago, and they didn't have a pastor as of yet still, but there were still visitors coming, still guests coming, which is good. That's good.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to be careful as it relates to church decline, church growth, as to, if it's our success or failure. I just think we have to look at a broader approach of looking at it and learning through it. What could we do better? What could we, how can I reach my community more? Not necessarily just look at it at a negative point, like, oh, I'm done here. Maybe it's something that God can use to open our hearts and our minds to doing something more, doing something different, something outside of the box. What our community, how can we get our hands and our feet and our, into the heart of our community and serve our community best with the gospel. And so sometimes it may things may look different from Denair to North Little Rock to Houston or wherever people may be laboring, but of just trying to find what that is. And the only thing I know to do is make yourself, connecting to your community in some way, somehow. So, but I mean, I think if you see ebb and flows in church attendance and decline, and you have to look at that and evaluate, and if it is on you, then change. And don't feel bad about evaluating and examining your own life, your own heart, because I think God can grow us. We didn't enter into ministry knowing everything, so it could be time to learn and grow as well. I hope that.
I like that.
Hope that answers
it does.
your question.
Yeah. I liked a couple of the things you brought out specifically that stood out to me. One is keeping the idea of success in mind, like is obedience to God, and don't get overly caught up in the numbers thing. But I mean, it is something to be aware of. To do a self-analysis. Am I doing something that I could be doing now that I could be doing better? And looking at it as a way to improve, but also that we don't know what season we're in terms of the world and of our community and our church. And, we're just a small blip in the whole realm of the history of the world. And so keeping that in mind, that we might not see the fruit someone else might see. And you brought that all out, but that's just what stood out to me. So we'll move on to the next question here. Okay. How can we respond to negative or critical personal remarks from our congregants? Now, this one, I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Yes. Well, as a pastor or missionary or church leader, we're up front, so we're going to get the most criticism, but not all criticism is negative. I think when we think about the word criticism, we have a tendency to think negatively of, now everybody's a little bit different in their personality. I by nature am a people pleaser. So criticism, I hate to hear it because I just want to please everybody. But the reality is you cannot please everybody. And so I've had to learn that even sometimes when what I might perceive as someone being critical in a negative way, I have to really weigh that in my own heart and mind if they're not really attacking me. I'll give you an example. When my first experience in ministry as a youth pastor, and I was actually in Arkansas. I was there for 2.5 years. And I began to feel like the Lord was calling me to pastoral ministry. Not just being youth pastor, but a lead pastor. And so I asked the church if it would be okay if I went to, other churches to go and view the call, or, to interview for their pastor position. And the church was gracious and said yes. But at the time, I was getting phone call after phone call after phone call. And I was gone week after week after week. And I was young, and I wasn't thinking about what impact that would have on my current position in my own church, where my membership and my ministry was among the youth. And there was a man, a deacon by the name of John. And he was kind of that gruff exterior kind of guy. But he came to me, and he shared concerns about me being gone so many consecutive Sundays and the ministry involved here. And basically he asked me, he goes, and I think he was right, but he asked me, either you need to, be our youth pastor or resign, one or the other. And so at first, the way he brought about it, I was kind of hurt at first, like I felt, because again, I'm a people pleaser. I hate, and I had to stand back and I had to really look at him, because I saw that he had tears in his eyes. And I realized, he's saying this out of a heart of love for his church and for me. It wasn't an attack. He was just, it was something that was on his heart bothering me. And that was my first experience of realizing that when someone comes to me and doing something, or that I might be doing something that could be criticized, that not every time is it personal. The person actually may be coming across, because they love their church, they do love me, but they see this situation or circumstances that is concerning. And so I've kind of taken that through the years and have grown, and there's been challenges, and begin to examine some ways in which I could counter some criticism. And sometimes the first thing that I do is I don't necessarily respond right away to criticism. Like if something comes to an email or text message, sometimes, we have to admit that text messages and emails are very hard to read. You can't see the person's body language or inflection. And sometimes we can panic and read into things that were never there. So I don't respond right away. I take some time to pray about it and think about it. And then I try to look at it in a couple of ways. One is, what they're saying true? Is there any truth, any negative truth that they are sharing in this? And I also look in that is, I consider the person who's coming to me. And I kind of look at, okay, I don't see where they're like, they're not berating me and calling me bad names and telling me I'm no good. So, they're not personally attacking me in some of these, at least sometimes. I mean, there are people that do, but I do look at it, and then I try to do my best to then, after I prayed about it, considered, look at it, to reply in a very godly, rational way. And once I filter it all, I do kind of throw away maybe the nonsense, because sometimes people come with nonsense. But that's the best way that I know to deal with the criticism. Because as I gotten through years as a leader, there was another situation at Denair, and I have a big heart for the people still at Denair. They're a lot like my family, very personal. Been there a long time. My daughter and son-in-law still attend there, and I I was just there a long time. They still have my heart. It was very difficult to leave, but there's been times that I was leading them, and that there were times where I wanted to lead them in a certain direction, and they didn't agree with me. And sometimes I'd go home a little frustrated, like they're not following my leadership, and sometimes it's so quick because, again, I'm a people pleaser, and thinking to myself, I wonder if I'm done here. Should I move on? but that wasn't really it at all. Sometimes some things were on me where I did not teach them the direction I wanted to go. I didn't lay the foundation of the reason why we should go this direction. And so they didn't see the vision necessarily. And sometimes, it was just for, their own preferences. So I'll give you an example. Yeah. Again, most Sunday night attendance in churches these days are declining. And so we had, we still had at the time BTC and our evening worship. And we did 45 minutes of classes and then really only 45 minutes of worship. And our numbers were dropping Sunday evening. And I'm like, what can we do to better use our time to honor the Lord here, where it'll be more, where we can bring more people in. And so I suggested, after a lot of prayer, about let's do away with BTC and just have an hour of quality worship, to the Lord. And at first, a lot of people were like, "Yeah, this is right." And then, but the people were still hesitant, to do away with BTC classes. We need more Bible and not less. And I get that.
Yeah.
And but more people seemed that night to be for it than against it. So I thought, okay, this is going very, very well. And but the church says, well, let's take a couple of weeks. Let's pray about this. Let's think through this. And during that 2 weeks, and as people thought, it reversed totally. That people didn't want to get rid of it. And and even though I was for it, and they didn't necessarily want to follow that direction, I was not going to, throw a fit or, force them into a direction they wanted to go. I actually thought about, I need to listen to the people. And if this is what they want, then this is what we're going to continue to do. But I shared with them, then people are going to have to attend. And our attendance, after that discussion, our attendance did go up. But it took some time to work through. But so they didn't follow me in what I wanted to do, what I thought, would be, prayerfully considered what the Lord would have us to do. And there could be a lot of reasons to keep it, not keep it. But at the end result, at the end time, it did improve our evening attendance. It wasn't great by any means, but it did improve. And I think it made people realize that, the quality of teaching, the, quality of preaching, it made people saw the value in coming Sunday evening. So that helped, but I didn't take it personal at the end of the day. I just, was I disappointed? Sure. But it wasn't something that was going to destroy me or, cause me to, not get out of bed in the morning because I'm depressed. It was just, it was not personal. And through those times of leading and ministry, I've had to really work on that. Not everything that when someone disagrees with me, when someone says, something critical, hey, you said this in a sermon, I don't think that was appropriate, or something. Maybe I said a joke, or something. I genuinely think I try to project that the person is coming from a good place, and when presenting this, and I'll consider it. I won't dismiss it all the way. I won't dismiss them. And I'll just go through this process of, maybe not responding. I'll say, hey, I'll pray about this. Let me think about it. And I will, I'll get back to you, tell you what what do you think or whatever. And usually that served me well. And I think what it does too is it builds a relationship between the person who's being critical and you, that you do see value in what they're saying. Right. And consider it. So it builds a good bridge between you and your critic. So
Mhm.
And it's okay. It's okay to say if they are right, to say, I was wrong. I was wrong. And
Yeah.
and because sometimes we are wrong.
Yeah. Amen.
So,
We are. We
yeah.
are. And it's to be willing to apologize in those situations shows a lot to the people, and it's beneficial for us and our relationship with God and our ministry and everything. What really stood out to me while you're talking is just the overall idea of understanding. Like, you want to be understanding of them.
Yes.
And that takes time. You mentioned the pausing. I think of James 1:19 about everyone being quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And that's
Absolutely
kind of what I saw in your answer. And I thought that was really, really wise advice. I think we could learn a lot from just pausing before we speak, and giving people the benefit of the doubt, that usually it's not personal, and it's a lot of times difficult for people to come up to you and build up the courage. Maybe not for everybody, but
Right.
for a lot of people to build up the courage and to say those things. I think we've had a lot to chew on today from these things. I don't want to put so much into this episode that we just we leave not having some big takeaways. But I think these two questions and your answers, I mean, they it's something anybody listening could use, because I mean we have some Russians that listen, and they may not be in charge of a church where their attendance is declining, but they may be in a situation where they're in a job, or they're over some people at work, and their business isn't seeming to be functioning as well. Maybe people are leaving, maybe good people are leaving, and they're wondering why. And again, self-analysis, prayerful self-analysis. I think of the Psalms where I think it's Psalm 139 where praying about search me, God, or show me my heart, see if there's any wicked way in me. Exactly. And so just praying that prayer, getting the log out of our own eyes before we come back and move forward with that. So any last bits of advice or thing you want to add into before we close out today?
Well, I know that the last couple of years have been very difficult for pastors and church planners because of COVID. And I know that sometimes we felt alone and isolated, and sometimes our people, I mean, if we never faced more criticism, it was mask, no mask, meeting, no meeting. Mm-hmm. And sometimes us as pastors, we were in a no-win situation. And so I had through that, because another part of learning is people being critical is all I knew to do through that time was we were going to do whatever it took to honor God and keep people safe, whatever that looked like, to honor God and keep people safe. And so it changed constantly what we did. We met inside, we met outside, we went, we never forced people to wear masks. We left that optional. Some people didn't like it, but that's the decision we made together collectively. And then once we made that decision, I just stood by it and kind of went through. I think God honored it, because our hearts were, no one has gone through this before. We're going to honor him. That's what we want to do, is honor him. But at the same time, do the best that we can of keeping people healthy and safe. So we did the best we could. And did we do it perfectly? Probably not. I don't know of anybody who did. There's a lot of varying ideas, and even brethren might be criticizing each other. Well, I would have shut down, or I would have stayed open. But you're not in that area. You're not in that culture. That there's a lot of things to consider. And so, again, with the idea of criticism, all all I know for me is I have to be right with God, right? I need to be right with God and realize that, if I am striving to honor him and do the right things according to Scripture, I know that I'm just a man that has faults that could be open for criticism. And I have to take, I'm just going to take each criticism as what it is a time to grow. So I'll discard the crud and take what might be applicable to help me grow as an individual, and try to not look at the person as if they're going to attack me, and that they're really genuinely wanting to honor the Lord themselves and move forward. So that's really all.
That's really great advice. And I like the stories that you've shared. I think it's relatable for a lot of our listeners, similar backgrounds and different things. And so thanks for sharing those stories. I got a lot out of them. And honestly, just the idea of being a person of understanding. And even if people aren't coming with the best of intentions, so a lot of times, we give them the benefit of the doubt. We can just have the understanding that sometimes hurt people. Yep. That, we don't necessarily know what the person's going through to have said that, and just taking the time to reflect, like you said, and pause and come to some more understanding. Maybe you'll learn about, something they're going through, that they've just lost someone, or they just lost their job, or they've had a difficult time with their family recently, and you can minister to them then. And so it's sometimes, just not jumping to conclusions and taking things personally. Don't take it personally. That's a way to depression, I think. Yeah. It's just to do that. But thank you so much, Todd, for being willing to consider this podcast and answer these questions with us today. I really hope it's beneficial for everyone out there. I know it's been beneficial for me, and I think it's something that we could all learn from, no matter where we're at in our ministry, whether we're missionary, our pastor, church planner, or just someone else. We can learn from these lessons. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's an honor. I know there are a lot of men who are probably way more qualified than myself to answer some of these things, but I appreciate the opportunity to be on and just share what I know. So.
Well, thanks, Todd. Yeah, I appreciate it. You've had years of experience in it, and it shows. Just the fact that you're willing to take the time to understand and do a self-analysis is probably speaks to some of the reason that you're still around in ministry. Yeah. So thank you for sharing, and we appreciate it so much having you today. And for those listeners out there, this has been the Heartway Podcast, where we seek to help with issues at the source. Until next time.